when something's promised here and it doesn't happen. We do what we do, keep our beady eye on these things. I'm now delighted to welcome Tom Hunt MP, who's guesting on our committee today as a very welcome guest from our sister committee, the Education Select Committee. Over to you, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you very much, Chair. Do you think that mainstream schools are adequately incentivised to be to attract as many special educational needs pupils as possible?
I think so. I'd start by saying I think most schools are staffed by lots of people who want to do the best for as many children as possible. And I mean, I do think incentives in the system are important, but I think we need to be slightly careful of sort of building a model that doesn't account for people's kind of goodwill and good intent as well. I mean, we do hear concerns about that. I would say the first level of concern we hear is about how well equipped people feel to deal with different types of special educational need and disability, and how well supported they feel by the systems around them. So, and that's what sits behind some of the provisions in the Green Paper around better training for staff to help them use best practice, and one of the kind of important bits of the proposition for national standards is that they would set out, as well as setting out what you'd expect at different levels of more serious need, actually they'd set out what a reasonable expectation should be, not just of what a mainstream school should be able to offer, but of what they should expect to be able to have around them to support them in making that offer. So things like speech and language therapy and educational psychology provision, which we know are very difficult, that schools will tell us they can't get access to enough of that to support children in the schools. Yep. Then on the incentives, the third thing that is sometimes raised with us is performance tables and how schools that feel or worry, often schools will express this about other schools rather than about themselves. So they'll say other schools don't take children with special educational needs because they're worried about how they'll do in performance tables, but we do, and that penalises us. And we've got an item in the consultation which asks questions about changes to performance tables to help us recognise that better.
Because I understand there is a new Ofsted framework, which which I understand it could improve the situation. Yes. I take your point about good intentions. I do not doubt the good intentions of everyone who works in the school system, but I have spoken to people in the school system who do feel sometimes they feel that there is a conflict between wanting to do what is morally the right thing to do, but also not unreasonably wanting to be professionally successful. So I think it's about trying to take that conflict away. And there's obviously the financial aspect as well. Second question is to do with I was welcoming, the push for more SEND specialists. I think that's good news. But I was worried by a statistic I saw recently which said that only 40% of sort of regular teachers feel as though they're adequately supported in terms of being able to support young people with learning disabilities. So I was wondering if there's going to be some sort of changes to general teacher training. Yes, we need more specialists, but I also think we need to get to a point where every single teacher has a sort of base level of understanding of every single different type of learning disability, so it can help spot it and also help support those people who are unconventional thinkers.
Exactly.
Thank you. I'll bring you in
on this. Straight to Ms. Morris. Ms. Morris.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back in a way to your previous question as well, and about actually the potential to do more to support children with special educational needs in the mainstream classroom through good teaching, and that's what you see in the really great schools. And if we're improving the clarity of the expectation of the mainstream offer, if we're improving the whole accountability regime, including as well, I'd point to the school's white paper, very clear signal about inclusion is good, then that actually also sends a really important signal to teachers about their professional development and what it takes to be a good teacher in the classroom, and that it's not simply for a specialist school or teacher.
Do you think there are some sort of tangible, concrete changes that should be made to teacher training to help address the point that I've raised? Is there any way in which you think it's not working as it should at the moment in ensuring that every teacher has a sufficient level of understanding of different
Some of it is about encouraging teachers to take up existing opportunities and recognising that SEND is a mainstream teaching skill, not a job for somebody else. Yeah. Also, the reforms that we're proposing on alternative provision, I think is really important as well, because part of that, an element of that, is about helping develop the skills and the practice in mainstream schools. So it's not just seen as this is something for AP or this is something for specialist, where those children can thrive in a mainstream environment.
Thank you. Just one more question, and if I've got time, maybe we'll have a quick one of it. I think it might be for Stephanie. You mentioned diagnosis of people's autism at primary school and emotional and health disabilities in secondary school. You're aware that Matt Hancock is looking to push a bill at the moment, looking to screen every young person for dyslexia. I understand that there may be some differences of opinion about how it works best. I mean, some people are concerned about labelling young people with dyslexia when they might not have dyslexia. Some people have said that there's been a bit of a debate about the right age to do it. I think I'm hearing 8 might be the best one to do it. I guess my position is that perhaps as it stands right now, it might not be perfect, but is there a desire within the department to find a way of making it working? Because I know firsthand that it was, some people do generally have learning disabilities which are more hidden, like dyslexia, dyspraxia. I know from personal experience, it was only when I got diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia that things went right for me. So this is incredibly important. So I wanted to get an update from you about how you're working with him to try and make this a reality.
So certainly, the first thing about working with Matt Hancock is that we are running a round table actually with him and our ministers and a group of other people to come and talk about this. So that is being held at the end of May. And absolutely open mind about, as you say, there are different points of view about what might be the best approach. And what we do know, though, is that children present as unique individuals, and dyslexia is an all-encompassing term, and some people are saying, well, actually, one form of dyslexia might be slightly different to another child. So what actually our intention is that early identification will address your unique need, and actually you will get the right, we want you to have the right response to
Would you look at dyspraxia as well?
So I think we're looking across the piece at early identification of as what all sort of need. We are putting in 2.6 million, I think, for early autism diagnosis, and I think there's going to be around 100 schools involved in a pilot on that, actually, about looking at early identification in that space. So we're very much looking forward to those conversations that we're having with Matt Hancock and others, and we'll again feed all that into the wider consultation before we come back.
Final question from me, just in terms of the inclusion dashboards, and the role that yourselves, Ofsted, will have in this. At what stage, what would be the trigger point for you as a department deciding that this a local education authority just is not up to it and has failed too often and has let down too many young people that you have to step in and take direct action? In other words, will it have teeth?
Yes, it will, but I think, a bit in line with the approach we now take across the school system, we're much more likely to see inspection as the trigger of intervention than a pure number on a dashboard, because the number should be prompting us to ask really hard and serious questions, but sometimes there are good reasons for numbers that don't look very good on the dashboard. And I think it's important that what the numbers are doing is triggering a really robust and good quality conversation. And as Indra says, that might be locally, it might be nationally, it might be both. And of course the dashboards will be available to Ofsted and the CQC as well. But in general, it would be inspection that was the trigger for hard-end intervention, because that's a better rounded picture of what's going on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. Sorry, Ms. Morris, did you want to add anything?
One of the things that we're working with the new regions group is how we use that in a sort of, if you like, a ladder sort of conversation intervention.
As we would see with local authority intervention across other departments too. Okay. Thank you. And I'm very interested and heartened that the department's working with backbench MPs on developing legislation. Is that an open invitation to all backbench MPs, or is there a particular framework under which Mr. Matt Hancock is engaging with the department through the Secretary of State, or is it just...
So I think, we try to be open and have good conversations with anybody who brings us a good proposal. Backbench MPs, anybody who brings us a really good...
I think there might be a flood of people coming your way, Ms. Ackland, from all parties, so thank you for that clarification. Kate Green, MP.
Thank you. Yes, could I just go back to the question that Mr. Hunt was addressing around incentives and disincentives, particularly for mainstream schools. School leaders tell me repeatedly that the biggest disincentive is having to find the first £6,000 of funding out of their